Good morning, folks. Welcome aboard another day of Building Evie. I've just been doing some sort of tidying up since Jukes has left. Not that he's messy, but we weren't really focused on that. But the ceilings have stayed up. It's really satisfying to know that actually the design all that time ago that Stu and I came up with, thanks Stu, that look, the ceiling does work. It's perfect. It's the way it should be. Anyway, so I've got that cupboard to get on with. I've also got that wall to get back up in the bathroom. That's where the bathroom cabinet will hang. So I think I'm going to start with the bathroom cabinet. So I started by getting the bathroom cabinet and putting it back on this. I put a little temporary block of wood underneath to support it, but I realised that I could put a piece of timber in for it to hold its weight. I think it'll be fine on 12mm ply, to be honest, but you know, it was easy to put this in, so I did just cut it down used a carpenter square to figure the angle and use the chop saw and what have you. Then it was a question of drilling holes for the cables to come up through these two noggins that are there for lower down. They're actually for the shelves on the other side of the wall in the kitchen. Then I needed to put a hole in the wall, hopefully in the right place. Well, we'll see about that. Feed the cables through, and can't quite get it to line up. So I took it down again, drilled another hole, and then so it's sort of a figure eight hole now. Anyway, then it was a question of finding out where the brackets went, and inexplicably the instructions in the box didn't actually tell me how far apart to put them, so I had to work that out. Then it becomes a question of actually where to put the brackets and so on. Because I've got somewhere between not a lot of clearance on the right hand side and not a lot of clearance on the left hand side actually either, then well, it was just a question. I just did this kind of repeatedly, slowly, just to get it right, I hope. And anyway, it was a question of just putting it up and taking down. This sort of thing just reminded me, well, having had Dukes with me over the weekend, this would have been so much quicker with another person. I think that is the lesson that I have learnt more than anything else, is another person is extremely useful for anything. And anyway, I obviously needed to pop a hole in the back for the cables to come through, so that was done. And then it's just a question of tightening up the brackets that kind of pull it into the wall. So there we go. Anyway, it's done. Moving on to the rear wardrobe. So I've already got this bit of wood and the bit of wood on the side. Now I know these are slightly oversized. The corner piece where the Iroko will go, that is currently sort of occupied by both of these. Don't worry, I'm not doing any magic tricks. I'm not going to disappear when I go into the wardrobe. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll find Narnia. Anyway, there's just a question of trimming this down to be the right size. Good morning, folks. Well, this one has been setting up, drying overnight. So these each little piece is attached. I glued it on in the same way as I did with this one. But on this one, then I was a bit more careful. What I did was I glued that one and clamped it very tightly for about 5 minutes, and then the next one down, and then the next one down, and so on. So just to set it up initially, it meant that I was able to get a far better line on that than I did on the first one. You live and learn. And because the Iroko hasn't been waxed, then just a question of waxing that, and because there's overspill to the front face, then I decided that I would redo the face that you can see most of. It doesn't take much as a second coat. It seems to be okay. It makes it a bit darker. While I was walking through the boat, then I noticed this piece of ceiling was sort of coming out of its channel, so I took it off. We'll come back to that later. But anyway, this went back in without too much ado, and this went in, and so then, like, there I go, doing my magic trick again. I was in there for a bit longer. It just was easier to mark up what needed to come off from inside the wardrobe than it was from outside the wardrobe. Put a little screw in it just to help me hold it in while I was in there. And then I very carefully marked everything out, how far everything needed to be, left to right and up and down and what have you. and you notice that there's a line underneath it on the right hand side. That's because I'm working on the reverse of the board at this point. Just because the track saw cuts a bit better going up into the face. So as you can see, I'm taking great care. It will become apparent why you're watching this shortly. And then I put one cut in for the bottom first drawer, and here, this is where I noticed that I have done it wrong. The one side is much fatter than the other side, and so I have basically knackered it. But I carried on going anyway because I figured that in order to figure out whether it was going to be salvageable or not, then I had to carry on and get it to a point. So I did. Well, that's more than a little bit annoying. I don't know. Might have to replace it. In order to further decide from there whether I could salvage it or whatever, then it was 2 mil wider at one end than it was top or bottom or whatever. I can't remember which. But anyway, I had to rectify that. So now it's effectively 2 mil undersize all the way. And this is me deciding to chisel out where the track saw goes through. Then you don't quite get the corners unless you're lucky with the jigsaw. So just chiseling off the bits that are left by the circle of the track saw. I'm not sure whether I actually decided to keep it at this point or not, but there's a jiggery pokery in terms of getting off the pencil marks that I'd put so many of on this side. I could have used masking tape, maybe should have used masking tape to mark things up, but anyway, by this point then I have decided to keep it. That black mark I pointed out earlier would be a real problem on the main door, but I think I can actually use the faces of the doors as they were. So anyway, jiggery pokery to do on that. But this is at the back of the cupboard, just mounting something to mount the back of the cupboard to. And then on the other side and about here, then I realised that the heads, I've got some electronic heads for the manifold, and they won't go on it at this angle. I tried them, and so I undid this, which turns out was entirely unnecessary because at the far end, then it's in John Guest pipe. This is the only bit of John Guest pipe on the boat, but it is, and so I could have just slackened off the bit holding the manifold clamps, and just twisted the whole thing. But I didn't realise that, and I didn't do it, so that meant, well, there was more than a little bit of jiggery pokery with this, trying to get it to do back up. But as it happens, then inside on the right hand side, then there's a rubber seating washer, and that I'd got in slightly the wrong place. So it really was quite handy that I took this apart as it goes. Though I wish I kind of hadn't. I went and had to borrow a big spanner to get it done back up, but that's all done now, which means we can get back to the wardrobe. And here I realised that if I use the carpenter square on the blade guard of the track saw, then I could set that up without having to worry about exactly what angle it was and everything. So I was able to quickly get the supports for the back of the wardrobe cut, and then I got distracted by wanting to put a fair lead on the front of the boat. I realised that the rope is sort of slightly chafing the paint, and it's in the plan, so just thought I'd get on with it quickly. Centre punched where I wanted it. I've got some drill bits that are combined with taps. Unfortunately, one of them broke as soon as I got it, so that's still stuck in there. I shall have to get a tungsten carbide bit and see whether I can drill through it or something. I could, of course, mount it in a different place, but I don't really want to. So anyway, put the back in the wardrobe there, and then put the supports that I cut earlier with the track saw. These are at an angle, so I attached that piece of wood to the bottom support so that I got all of these in a line. And then I got on with measuring for the back, and I had to do this in 2 sections. It's going to be a complete pain in the proverbial to try and do it in one. This also is stood off the back wall sufficiently to let the air through the vent that's sort of the round thing about shoulder height, just below the gunnel. So the air will come in down there and come out down the bottom to where my knees are at the moment. Here I'm filling up with sound insulation. There are 2 holes into the engine bay at that point, because that's where cables go through and stuff. So I was filling those up and making it difficult for sound to get through. Here I realised that if I just put a little piece of wood on the top there, then I could seal that off, and that would be all quite nice. Here I'm just putting the facing clips to mount this to the side. Got a washer underneath them, just to so that I put them in the right place. I've drilled the pocket holes off camera, and yeah, so then I'm able to put it back up, or I hope. And so yeah, it all seems to go together quite well. Not too bad. It's not perfect. We know that it's it's a bit off because it's mirror image, and I had to adapt it. But it seemed to work well enough. And then put all the screws in the pocket holes and get those done up. Well, we now have two things that look like wardrobes. So despite the mistake with this one, I think it'll be okay. The hot water distribution will sort of act a bit like an airing cupboard-ish. Obviously that one's there. I'm going to have to take that one down in a bit. And then, of course, we have the bathroom cabinet. So there we are. That's all, folks. See you tomorrow.